Welcome to Doctor's Homestead. My name's Daniel.
And I'm Janet.
And we're joined here tonight with Jay, Strangely Strange. This is the Dystopian Book Club. So we're meeting tonight to look at Ray Bardbury's Fahrenheit 451. Got some audio here. So it's a good book. It was really interesting. I know we've all just read it, and we'll see how far we get into the book here. Got our phones are blowing up on us. First impressions. I think it was your idea, Jay, to get into Fahrenheit 451 before we dig into the book itself. What are your first impressions?
Well, yeah, like I was mentioning before, the pop culturalizing of truth, making it so like superficial and sensationalized that it stops being truth anymore. And so people, it was it gave me a lot of the chills. It wasn't quite what I was expecting from the blurb, but right. But no, it's still a very, very good read. I was able to be immersed in the world a lot easier than Brave New World. But a lot of interesting little snippets. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, anything you want to jump into before I? No. Okay. All right. Let me dig into some of my notes here.
I know you got something.
You guys stop me as always at any time. I've got pages and pages of notes that I'll start kind of tearing through here. So we'll start out with I've got to do honorable mentions credits. So some of this I'm using is from SparkNotes, some's from Book Caps. The copy of the book I had writings from other authors about Fahrenheit 451. So I grabbed little bits from this and that. So it's not all my writing. I kind of took ideas and text where I could to go through give the best review possible of the book. So we'll start out with who is Ray Bardbury. Ray Douglas Bardbury. He was born August 22nd, 1920, and lived until June 5th, 2012. He was an American author and screenwriter, one of the most celebrated 20th century American writers. He worked in a variety of genres, including fantasy, science fiction, horror, mystery, and realistic fiction. So best known for his novel Fahrenheit 451, published in 1953. So I've got some interesting, I read some of his interviews about how he feels about science fiction.
Oh, okay.
Kind of the story about how he wrote the book. Having read that, I was almost surprised when they're saying one of the most celebrated 20th century American writers, because that doesn't match. That does not match his story at all. So I wanted to kind of get into that a little bit. It was interesting seeing his story.
He wrote a lot of books.
He wrote a lot of books.
I remember reading a couple more.
Right. And Fahrenheit 451 was one of his first books, and he had a hard time getting it published.
Oh, okay.
Which was interesting.
I remember reading the Martian Chronicles, and then there was something else that I read of his.
Yeah, he did Illustrated Man. So in the introduction of the book by Neil Gaiman, in order to get the title of the book, this was before the internet, right, in 1950s, Ray Bradbury, he called the Los Angeles Fire Department and asked them at what temperature paper burns.
Okay.
And they said Fahrenheit 451. He says, all right.
Okay.
And he just went with it. That was Google.
What you did back then.
Right. That was Google search in 1950. I'll call the fire department and be like, what temperature
did they have encyclopedias yet then?
Because
I mean, I remember when I was growing up, it was like, go look it up in the encyclopedia.
Right.
Or how do you spell this? And they'd say, go look it up. And it always bugged me.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, well, if I don't know how to spell it now, how am I going to know how to look it up in the dictionary?
You're going to look it up. Yeah.
That always boggles my mind. Just keep sounding it out and like, nope, don't find it on this page.
No, yeah. So that was interesting, the title of the book, but there's more. So the book was written on a rented typewriter in the basement of the UCLA Powell Library. He had to put dimes into the typewriter because it was a rented typewriter to use the typewriter, and then he put more dimes in it. Yeah. He had to put more dimes in it. So he literally rented a typewriter in the basement of a library.
Dropping dimes.
When he wrote the book. Yeah, dropping dimes. And I've got more on that in an interview with him. So the story behind Fahrenheit 451 was interesting, and this was by Jonathan Eller. So Ray Bradbury wrote The Pedestrian, and that was one of his earlier novels. And it's interesting. So The Pedestrian was written about an encounter during a late night walk with a friend involving a police, right? And I guess the police, when Ray was on a walk with a friend late night, the police stopped them and questioned them.
Okay.
And it like impacted him so much that it actually led him 10 years later to write a book called The Pedestrian.
Oh.
And the pedestrian character eventually evolved into Clarice McClellan, which is the character.
Hello, Clarice.
Right. From Fahrenheit 451.
Oh, okay.
Clarice was the girl that went on walks. So
yeah. The little crazy little girl.
Right.
I could. She's like my people.
Right.
Clarice was my people. I totally got her.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think Clarice was actually Ray. So he wrote himself into the book as Clarice based on his experience. So as the book Pedestrian went, the pedestrian character was in a future world where virtual reality entertainment had replaced evening walks, which was, once again, this is in the 1940s. Yeah. 80 years ago, he envisioned this future.
Yeah, you're taking a walk at night because you're not doing...
People didn't walk anymore because we all had virtual reality entertainment. Right. Anyone out on a walk must be a dangerous deviant, right? Why are you out walking around? What's wrong with you? You must be nefarious. Okay. And that was his encounter with the police when he was just out for a walk. So the character evolved as someone that took late night walks, read forbidden books, and questioned authority. And that actually that kicked off his writing career, basically, was this encounter with the police, sort of getting harassed by the police when he was out for a walk, leading to the writing of The Pedestrian, which then led him into the writing of a book called The Firemen, right? So in 1950s, he wrote a novella called The Firemen, or Long After Midnight. The title changed a couple times because he was having a hard time getting it published. Right. And that became the concept for Fahrenheit 451.
Yeah. And then he kind of combined his ideas from those two
From The Pedestrian and The Firemen into Fahrenheit 451. And we know,
good for him that his vision finally came to fruition.
Yeah. We know Clarice was a main character. She was an important influencer in the book. And that was, I think, my opinion, was him just going on walks and just trying to take in the world. A lot of walks, Right, yeah.
So did Montag. He, walked home.
Yeah, right, right. So in an interview with Ray Bradbury, he said it cost him $9.80 to finish the first draft of The Firemen, which was a dime. One dime at a time, $9.80 to write The Firemen. Later became Fahrenheit 451. So because of that,
it's a lot of hours on a typewriter.
It's a lot of hours. It was considered a dime novel because you had to put dimes in the typewriter. Cool. So it was a old dime store novel because you're renting a typewriter and literally had to put like old payphones. You had to put a dime in the side. Yeah. So that was kind of cool. And then this I like the next part here. Arthur Knight wrote Shade of Orwell. So it said, although Ray Bradbury is often described as a science fiction writer, he shied away from the label, preferring to be known simply as a writer. He didn't like science, which was interesting. He says he was enthusiastic about writing, but not for the, I've got some bad writing on screen. He had a brave new world he feared scientists and geneticists have in store for us, which we just read Brave New World. So it was interesting. He was afraid that scientists, geneticists, and all this technology would put us in Brave New World. Yeah, well, so he didn't actually like science, even though he's accredited at the beginning of being like one of the top science fiction writers of all time. He actually hated science, which is kind of interesting. That was my opinion. And then like George Orwell.
Science fiction is sort of like just fantasy with tech instead of magic. In my head, though.
It is. Yeah. No, that's exactly what it is. Yeah. Instead of dragons and sorcerers, you've got flying cars and computers and stuff. Yeah. So he said, like George Orwell, he projects the more alarming symptoms of today's sicknesses upon a wall a few decades or generations away. So like Orwell, he was trying to kind of predict the future, right? And saying these are all the problems we have now. And if you look, if this keeps going 20, 30, 40 years down the road, it's going to be bad. Well, George Orwell his works really were focused on kind of a call to action to prevent the world from slipping into 1984. Right. So he felt, Arthur Knight felt that Orwell was trying to warn us about what could happen. And like that warning, hey, let's not do this anymore. Bradbury often conveys the impression that it's already too late. So he was more maybe a nihilist. He didn't like technology. He knew it was going to destroy the world, but there's nothing we can do about it.
Right.
He was sort of, so that was kind of interesting to read that about him. And then jump back to the beginning, saying one of the most celebrated American writers. You know, it's just kind of like, it doesn't match the beginning story of putting dimes in a typewriter.
Right.
You know. And then later in life, he's
a lot of his well-knownness came after he died, though. Really, like we see with
probably,
which seems like most artists, at least,
right? Yeah,
like the good artists were all misunderstood during their lifetime,
right,
and then celebrated in death.
Yeah. So what could be? They say one of the top novels of the century. You know, he wrote it on a typewriter in a basement and had a hard time getting it published. No one wanted to touch it. All right. So overview-wise, published in 1953, Fahrenheit 451 is a dystopian novel by Ray Bradbury that paints a bleak picture of society where books are banned and firemen burn any that are found. The story is set in a city in future American where intellectualism is suppressed and critical thinking is discouraged. The protagonist, Guy Montag, is a fireman who ironically starts questioning the oppressive regime he serves after an encounter with a free-spirited young woman named Clarice. Montag begins to grapple with the significance of literature and the consequences of society that stifles intellectual curiosity. And that's kind of part of the overview of the book. And obviously, we've all read the book here. Some of the big themes of the book before we get into it. One, of course, is censorship. I think that's a core theme of the book is censorship, right? Burning books, controlling thought and ideas and everything like that. And I feel like we see that now, right? Hard not to say that we see censorship in modern society in so many different
We've evolved
ways.
So much technically that we can censor now the moment you post something on social media. Censored, gone. It's not been published. They read it. A committee sat down and said, this book is horrible for our youth. Let's get it off. It's, bam, no. That's what you get for, software that, we've embraced that software, writing our dissertations. At least I know I did. That you could just, pick words from here or there and they're flashed and bam, and that's what they do.
Right.
Now. Instantly.
It's instant. And something interesting, going back to the 1950s, Bradbury thought the presence of fast cars, loud music, and advertisement would create a lifestyle with too much stimulation, which no one has time to concentrate. And we've come so far from fast cars, loud music, and advertisements.
Right. Because we have Ritalin to fix that now.
Right.
And Adderall and all those other good ADD meds. We don't have to worry about that.
There's so much distraction nowadays. So it's an interesting part of the theme. Another theme, knowledge versus ignorance. So you had Montag. Faber and Betty's struggle revolves around the tension between knowledge and ignorance. The fireman's duty is to destroy knowledge and promote ignorance in order to equalize the population and promote sameness. So there was a lot of that, right? You're burning books, you're destroying knowledge so everyone can be fat, dumb, and happy together. Right.
And that kind of ties in with the censorship too, because a lot of what we're seeing, people it was a natural progression. They chose to do that. They chose to get to the point where they're burning classic literature. And we're seeing that even now, like, we're justifying the censorship laws because we're, saying all these things. Oh, people believe like flat earth. A lot of people go, oh, well, people believe flat earth now. So that who knows what people can believe, who knows
I've just tripped down that flat earth
rabbit hole. She's been watching the flat earth stuff.
I'm like, why do they think that? It's fascinating.
Man. It is very fascinating. Yeah, it is very fascinating. Yeah. So, but we've got all this evidence to support a globe heliocentric, model, but we're still able to have misinformation placed in front of people where they believe it, you know, and they very, very much believe it. So, and so I feel like that's being used to weaponize the censorship as well, because they're going, you know, and then again, we saw again with the, you know, the self-medicating during COVID and stuff like that. You know, people were demonizing the people who had very legitimate reasons, mistrust, you know, budgets, you know, they probably had very legitimate reasons to probably try and self-medicate, maybe find this stuff themselves, and yet demonizing them for a broader systemic problem, you know, which is you can't trust authorities, you know. But yeah, sorry for my little.
No, that's okay. Good. No, it's good. Yeah, no, definitely. I know you had a lot to say on the book, so absolutely jump in on that. No, I mean, and just on the topic of censorship and misinformation, we see it so much in America right now. I mean, it's like half the country sees one version of a story and the other half sees the other version of the story. So that absolutely, like, they can't both be true. There's so much,
but everybody believes so much in their truth that there's no expanse of looking at things holistically anymore. And to really understand something, you should be able to see all the sides of it, and be able to question every part of it, even the part that you believe in. You know, you need to open your mind for. But
you know, and the thought I had, I was going through this, is they don't really have to burn books anymore, because nobody reads books anymore. You don't really have to burn books. There's so many other things. Nobody reads them anyway.
Cancel culture. That's the sort of reading books, you know?
No, you don't have to burn them. No one reads them anymore. It's whatever's on TV. You know, the people would have to read them for them to be burnt. All right. Another theme is technology.
Well, sorry, actually.
Oh yeah, no, go ahead.
Actually, when Beatty goes into the history, that's actually that was actually the step before burning all the old books, is that no one was reading them anymore. And then when the people who did pick them up, they were coming up with all these crazy ideas, and so that's when the switch came. And they all started.
That's us here.
We're like that step before.
Reading all these books, right? They're gonna come after us for reading the books and talking about them. You're not supposed to read those old books.
Not getting on these crazy ideas.
Absolutely. Themes, technology, which once again, after I read how Bradbury felt about technology, it's interesting. But the couple, he only really had 2-3 pieces of technology, and it was all negative. One was the parlors, which, you know, I think in 1950, that's sort of visionary, and we're almost there. You know, it was.
I like how they use the word parlors, because when you say parlors, I think of the old brownstones of Chicago that actually had a parlor in it.
Okay.
And the parlor was almost like your formal area where you would meet people, and people would sit around and stuff. And now they've changed. The parlors were just all massive.
It's wall-sized TVs, basically.
It's what is that? It's like immersion, like IMAX. It was like almost like an IMAX that they had.
Well, and also he had the hack where it used your name.
Yes.
So it was
for that.
Yeah.
And they can lip sync so that the image just changes, so it can lip sync. So it sounds like it's so it's more
right. Really, and it feels more like you. He's talking to you.
She was always watching.
Hey, Jay, are you watching? Are you watching this, Jay? I mean, the TV's talking to you using your name, which I feel like we're actually almost there with generative AI, all the generative AI stuff that's out there, the ability to create that content on the fly.
We could. I mean, I watch stuff on YouTube, and you know, the people will be like, "Hey, friend," you know,
hey, friend.
I mean, so even you know, YouTubers are, you know, engaging.
They're
trying to engage you as if you're my friend sitting.
Right. If you're my friend, I'm talking to you. Hey, buddy, how's it going?
Yeah. And when they were talking about that, it kind of in my head, I'm like, wow, that kind of reminds me of these people that say, "Hi, friend, welcome back."
Right. And I mean, I feel like the technology, it's almost there. Some of it is there in terms of the immersion, but you know what he had envisioned in the 1950s, we're not entirely there yet.
Right.
But I think it's it's there in some ways in terms of the level of distraction and immersion. It's not quite there to the word, the word of the book, where you've got the things talking to you and using your name and sort of.
I'm sure we probably have the ability to do it if we wanted to.
Right, plug it in. I think we're getting closer to that. The next one were the mechanical hounds, which was example of technology's destructiveness, appears in the mechanical hound, a metal contraption designed to track and kill lawbreakers. All the hound must be specifically programmed with the biometrics of the person it's meant to attack. Early in the novel, the hound acts aggressively towards Montag, suggesting that the hound technology may be easy to manipulate to nefarious ends.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, because Montag was worried that hound was biocharged
calibrated
towards him.
Yeah, we were talking about the hound on the technology side. So, I mean, the first piece of technology he had was the parlor, which wasn't meant as a good thing. It wasn't like, hey, look at this great technology they're going to have in the future. It was, hey, we're going to create this TV that fills up your entire room and it's going to destroy your life. It was sort of.
I don't think he was paranoid, though.
Yeah.
Because when you get into the book, that dog was bio.
Right. The next one was the hound, which was this kind of killing machine, basically a Terminator robot.
So I feel like when he first interacted with him early in the book, he already was, his boss was already onto him.
Yeah.
So, so I feel like the hound was already leery at that point because it was pretty close to what, because he said he was sending the hound around.
Right.
I thought you would get get the clue that I was onto you because I was sending the hound around. So I think the hound was already.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't want to do spoilers because we haven't even gotten to the book yet, but at one point he stole the book, but then you realize, no, he had a whole bunch of books.
Right.
So he had been stealing books for a while.
Yeah, the hound was already on.
The hound was probably already on. Yeah, I think he was.
And they scare me, those things, because we see them. We've got them in real life.
Oh, you have them? You've got the robot dogs out there?
That scares him. I'll tell you what. That is his.
Yeah, but I've seen them like on the news and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, they were gonna use them in New York here, actually put them on patrol, and enough people complained and protested and freaked out that they pulled back.
Yeah.
But it's the technology's already there for the robot dogs.
You and those robot dogs.
Robot dogs. I was going to get a tattoo of one of the robot dogs. Yeah. Well, during COVID, they strapped a loudspeaker onto the robot dog and they did a remote communication. It was going through the neighborhoods telling people to stay in their houses.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was going to get the robot dog with the loudspeaker duct taped on it as a tattoo, but the guy couldn't quite work it out. I ended up getting a couple other tattoos. I got a couple other ones. Nice. Maybe we'll come back to the robot dog. Yeah. It was those robot dogs will mess you up.
You and that robot dog.
You got to watch out for those robot dogs. And then the other technology, not to do spoilers, was atomic bombs, right? Which is the most destructive technology of all time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, really, there's three technologies: was parlors, Terminator robots, and atomic bombs. Well, but that put them in the sci-fi category. What was that?
Yeah.
Oh, the earpieces. Yeah.
Which we have now.
Absolutely. Which we have now. They may not have had then.
Right.
Yeah, they may not have had those in 1950.
Yeah, I doubt it.
Yeah, no, that's a good call out.
Yeah, they didn't because
I don't think they had
those flip phones were real big on Star Trek.
Right, they must not have had those earpieces. They did not have the earpieces. Yeah,
so.
No, you're probably right. That's a good call out. Yeah, yeah.
And almost got busted. You guys have got on, I think.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, they probably had these. Yeah, but it would have to plug into something. I mean, I'm sure they had radios, but not like magical earpiece standalone radios.
No, hearing aids were gigantic. I bet when if they had them, because they used to. I know that in old pictures you see people held the hearing aid up to their ear, and it was like a cup.
Right. The horn. They had the horn so they could hear. It'd be like, what? What?
Can't hear you.
All right. Some themes.
Just to go back to the parlors.
Yeah. Yes.
That's one of the very few instances of reading that's still allowed because I even forget his wife's name now. But she had a script. She had a script in front of her And so I think they did the shows, and you'd be able to read the script. That was one of the few instances of reading that people still did. Because I was curious, like if they're burning all the books, how are people literate? Like how are they going about their day-to-day lives?
Right. No, that's a good point.
But that freed up. So, but anyway, sorry, keep going.
No, that's a good point. That is, no, probably because it was so, it was the junk food of reading. Yeah, it's the script to the TV show you're watching. I guess they allowed it, but you're right. Yeah, why would people learn how to read if you didn't have books? Yeah, no, that's an interesting point. Absolutely. If he was still around, we'll get him on the show.
I think they still had magazines.
They still
said they had magazines and trade journals and stuff like that. No.
And plus their day-to-day, they would have needed day-to-day reading and
you would think so. Signs and stuff, street signs, order food. Yeah, you can read the nutritional information on the food or anything.
Yeah.
On the t-shirts. They didn't really get into that. That's a good point. So beyond the technology theme, knowledge versus power, the other one was dissatisfaction. So the theme of dissatisfaction has close connections to the themes of technology and censorship. The dystopian society Bradbury represents in the novel arose in its present form because of technological innovation. Technological innovation led to the ascendancy of television, which in turn led to the devaluing and eventually the censoring of books. As Captain Betty explains in Montauk, the social history that led to the present state of affairs had everything to do with ensuring people's peace of mind by keeping them entertained. As long as everyone remains entertained, they'll be happy. So that was kind of the idea of the overall dissatisfaction.
And unlike with Brave New World, with having to dose everyone with soma.
Right.
Just lowest common denominator entertainment.
Right. Yeah. Well, maybe they needed some soma in this one because everyone was sort of unhappy, and they see that with his wife.
Seems like a lot of melancholy.
Yeah. His wife was like sucked into the TV all the time. And then there's the scene that we'll get into like right away where she kills herself or tries to kill herself, So, I mean, everyone was pretty unhappy in the world while they were constantly entertained. Protagonist Guy Montauk, not going to read too much about him. We'll learn about him as it goes. Antagonist was Captain Betty, and you guys might pronounce it differently. Betty.
Betty. Yeah, I was saying
Betty.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Betty.
Setting. So Fahrenheit 451 takes place at an unreported time in an undisclosed city, and they said the reason he did that was important implications for the central book's message, namely the obscurity enables Bradbury to warn that disaster could lie in store for all Americans anywhere in the near future.
Yeah.
So he didn't give a time, like even the Brave New World kind of tried to give a time, sort of. Oh, turn on closed captions. I don't know how to turn on closed captions on this. I'm sorry, Eliza.
Figured out.
Yeah, I don't know how you turn that on the live. I don't know if it's something you can do on the phone or something we'd have to do on our end. We'll take a look at that, see if there's some way to turn on closed captions. All right. So the idea of the setting, as I said, Brave New World, he actually gave a year. Not that the year mattered because it was like 2,000 years in the future or something like that. He intentionally didn't say this is New York, this is Chicago.
Right.
It was just a city at some point in the future.
Yeah.
Because once again, he was more nihilistic in the sense of all the technology is going to get us and there's nothing we can do about it, was sort of his take, his mental, where he was at mentally. Genre, as we said, science fiction, and then of course dystopian. It's a future that aligns with their social and political ideas. Dystopian fiction focuses on problematic aspects of society that do not align with the author's ideals. So it's the idea of it wasn't a good vision of the future. So I'll skip the character list. All right. Now, the book is split into 3 parts. It doesn't really have chapters. All right. There's part 1, part 2, part 3. I looked at a couple different reviews on the book and different kind of way to break it down. And someone had split it into sections, and I kind of like that. Otherwise, we're trying to do like a third of the book at a time, right? So I've got it split up into sections. Oh, wait, okay.
My reader split it into 3.
Okay, yeah. So we've got it in sections. Veerhart says, just finished this book last week. It brought me to your channel when I saw you had the schedule. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining in. Appreciate that. I don't know we'll finish the book tonight, but we're going to talk about the book tonight, and we'll probably have a second one because I'm rambling a lot here. If you got any thoughts, absolutely share them with us in the chat.
StreamYard does not have captions built in during
all right, yeah. Eliza, so no captions on StreamYard, but I think on the replay.
Yes, on the replay it'll be
yeah, it just doesn't. This is where you're using StreamYard as the technology here. They don't have captions, but it might be on the replay.
I apologize.
Yeah. All right, so we'll keep going here. So we got 5 sections. So part 1 was Hearth and Salamander. If you split it into 5 sections, section 1 is from the opening through Montag's arrival at home. Section 2 is from Montag to his bedroom through the rain scene with Clarice. Section 3, the first scene in the fire station, Rue burning the old woman on Elm Street. Section 4 from Montag and Mildred in bed to Beatty's arrival. And then section 5 from Beatty's visit through the end of Hearth of Salamander. So we'll kind of take it by section, and then we can talk through it. So I'll start with part 1, section 1. We're starting the book officially here.
Yay.
From the opening. we're starting it. We're serious now. All right. The story is set in a grim and futuristic United States. Guy Montag is a fireman. In this world, his job means that he burns books. At the opening of the book, we read a short description of how much pleasure he takes in the job at this point. He wears a black uniform adorned with a salamander on the arm, a helmet with the number 451, this being the temperature at which paper burns, and a phoenix disc on his chest. While making his way home from the fire station, he has a sense of nervous anticipation. After he suspects a nearby presence, he comes across his new neighbor. It's Clarice McClellan, a 17-year-old who is both unique and inquisitive. Clarice immediately realizes that he's a fireman and appears to be fascinated by his uniform and by himself. By him himself. She says that she is crazy and goes on to suggest the fireman's original duty was to put out fires rather than to start them. She asks him questions about his job, and she informs him that she has a strange family and does odd things such as talk to one another and walk to places. In the society, being a pedestrian is illegal. Clarice oddnesses causes Guy to feel nervous, and he finds himself constantly laughing. In different ways, she reminds him of a mirror, a clock, and a candlelight. He cannot stop himself from feeling, in a way, attracted to her. He finds her fascinating. Her strange questions, shocking lifestyle, insightful perceptions, and incredible power of identification interest him. She asks whether he is happy and then goes back into her house. Thinking about this absurd inquiry, he goes into his house and thinks about the puzzling stranger and her understanding of his innermost trembling thoughts. So that's sort of section 1 if we want to take it that far.
It's sorry, yeah, I got more into Clarice after. I've got a bit to say
that's
about
fine.
Finding his wife. But
yeah. I think that's the next.
That kind of kicks it off, doesn't it? Like it just kind of sets up the stage. This is the mind frame of the normal population, and this is like a knocking out that bottom apple from the pile. You know, it's just all gonna tumble down.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, they that's a reoccurring theme. It keeps coming up how she's like, I thought firemen used to put out fires, and he sort of gets in trouble later at work, bringing that up. Like, didn't we used to put out fires? And like, no, we didn't. And they've got the whole story. They've got the new truth where no, we never put out fires. What are you talking about? We always burn stuff. That's what we always done. You can tell that
she was her and her family.
Yeah.
They were probably the people that the firemen were looking for in the first place.
Right. Yeah.
Clearly they were reading books and sitting on front porches and doing all the things that they didn't want society to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some symbolism from that section called the hearth and the salamander. The fireplace or the hearth is a common symbol of the home. The salamander is an official symbol of the firemen, in addition to what they refer to as their fire trucks. Both of these symbols are related to fire, which is the image most dominant in Montag's life. The hearth is related to fire because it holds the fire that provides heat at a home, and the salamander is linked to fire as a result of ancient beliefs, yet it resides in fire without being affected by flames. So they had a lot of symbolism, the hearth, the salamander, the phoenix, kind of all of it right away. Even some foreshadowing there on his costume, on his uniform.
We got a comment that I think is pretty fascinating.
A good comment? All right, let's see.
Because I never thought of that, but that's.
Oh yeah, Ryan, I'll even put that on here. So that is some truth, right? Not sure if she was a real person. I was wondering the same thing. Sort of a fight club. Was it kind of a in his imagination? Right. But I think later on he asked Beatty about Clarice, and they say she was dead and the family moved away. I know that was a conversation. Had their eyes on the family. Right. That she was dead and the family moved away or something like that. So up until that point, I wondered too, was she a real person? But they had that moment where someone else had said basically that or maybe it was the wife that said, someone had said.
No, I think it was Beatty. Yeah.
It might have been Beatty. They're like, oh no, we were watching them. They're gone. She's dead. So that's a good question though. I was kind of wondering the same thing.
She didn't seem real. Yeah.
Almost. Right. Absolutely. Could have. And as I mentioned before, I think that was Ray writing himself into the book based on his own life experiences, which was kind of interesting that he, I think, was that character.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So part 1, section 2, Montag in his bedroom through the rain scene with Clarice. So Montag finds his meeting with Clarice disturbing because he's not accustomed to discussing personal subjects. When he returns home, he begins to recognize that he is not happy and that his appearance of being happy has just been pretense. He continues to feel a sense of foreboding. He discovers his wife Mildred in bed. She's listening to seashells, which are the earplug radios. Yes. Must have not been a thing in the 1950s.
Right.
He didn't have a word for it.
Those were their little pots.
Right. He didn't have a word for it, so he made up seashells. We would just be like, earbuds or something. But there were special radios that went in your ear.
Well, because when you put the shell to your ear, you hear the ocean. So he's probably like
seashells, right?
Or something? I don't know. Yeah, that makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the funny thing, with these books going back and people imagining stuff that we just take for granted now.
Yeah.
It'd just be like she had her earbuds in her ear from her iPhone.
Of course she did.
Not magic seashells.
Right.
Right. He found her lying in the bed this way every evening for the previous 2 years. Beside her bed, he inadvertently knocks over an empty sleeping pill bottle. He contacts the hospital at the moment that a sonic boom coming from a squadron of jet bombers causes the house to shake. A couple of hospital workers with a cynical attitude arrive at the house with a machine that will pump Mildred's stomach. Montag will later call this device the snake. They'll also bring another machine that will replace all of her contaminated blood with fresh blood. Montag ventures outside and hears voices and laughter arising from the well-lit McClellan house next door. Montag goes back inside, thinks about everything that's happened to him that evening. He has a terrible feeling of disorientation as he dozes off after taking a sleep lozenge. So before we jump to the next day, did you guys want to...
that made me think that maybe they didn't even have dialysis back in those days.
Right. Yeah. Didn't have a machine. Yeah. Because he had to make up the idea of a machine that cleans your blood.
Right. He had to make
which is a dialysis machine. And then the snake, they just pump your stomach. But he sort of made up a machine that will pump your stomach.
And this was when?
1950s.
Yeah. I think we take for granted how much we've come along in, the medical community in such a short time.
Right. Yeah. In the book, they sort of sound like they kind of airdropped these guys on the house. Like the moment he called in, they just, like a jet comes and they just drop
they're like
in.
a Pulp Fiction cleanup crew. They're just
boom, there with a dialysis machine and a stomach pump machine. And he gave him $20. Like, here's your $20 on the way out or something.
Yeah, we're on to the next person that tried to kill themselves.
Right, yeah, this happened. And that's kind of the reoccurring theme, right? They needed their soma. That's the society was missing soma. because everyone was pretty depressed. When you got a special crew that's like,
it's deeper than that. So you're taking it back to Brave New World. They need their soma to be happy. Maybe they just needed interaction with people.
Right. Less dystopian society.
Maybe if you see that their heads were stuck in technology the whole time and they still weren't happy, maybe they needed to have some
Clarice.
Be Clarice, yeah.
Clarice,
I mean, she was my favorite part because, you know, she saw the beauty in everything around her.
Yeah.
And because these people were stuck in technology the whole time.
Right. You know? No, I think, Jay, you said you had some thoughts. Was that where you wanted to jump in or?
Yeah, just talking about like some of the things that even he's writing in the future, just he gets so many things like the $50, like paying the guys. Just this, you know, that's only like $600 today, sort of thing.
Right,
you know, like
right.
There's no way, you know that.
Right.
And it says here minimum wage for a 40-hour week was about $40 pre-taxes back in the 50s.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was about a week's wage still, but
okay.
Oh, people smoking while doing the medical procedure as well.
Yes, they were. I remember that. Yeah. He's like having a cigarette where they're like, hey, dude, we're almost done here.
Well, in those days, they were what cigarette does your doctor like? My doctor
smokes Lucky Strikes.
Yeah, I mean, it was normal then. Everybody smoked in the 50s.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just those funny, and how the operator, they've still got the operator. He calls an operator and the operator puts him through to the hospital. So yeah, just the little things like that. There's just how had things not changed? Like for example, the money and the inflation. If we were writing this now, we would put the inflation, you know, $1 trillion as an everyday wage because we've seen it happen. But obviously, they haven't seen as much of their money inflating as much to be able to go, oh yeah, you know, that's just my
It's $50,
idea.
And that was a lot back then.
Yeah, but it was but it was still a week's wage. But like, wouldn't like a normal hospital visit now be like 3-4 weeks wages? You know, maybe even 6.
Yeah,
you know, so
maybe a year's worth.
It's a year. Yeah, I have a friend.
A couple years worth.
I have a friend that got bit by a poisonous snake. We got poisonous snakes out here, and he has insurance, but. Thus, just the cost of the anti-venom billed through the insurance was like $120,000
US dollars.
Yeah, just for the anti-venom, and he was in the hospital for like 4 days.
Wow. Yeah, American healthcare is very overpriced.
Yeah, which is that could be 2 years' wages for some people. You know, $120,000. That could be that'll bankrupt you, and that's just for the anti-venom for a snake bite. So yeah, for him it was like $50, leave it on. Here you go. We're going on. We're gonna put on our jetpacks and go to the next suicide. It's like, you know,
how much the purchasing power. But yeah, it's funny just some of the things that they don't get. You know, they've got a lot of things that they have predicted the future of, but just other things.
Right. But who would predict that? You know, healthcare in America would basically rape people. You know, it's supposed to be to help people, and yet we still can't.
Yeah.
We still can't seem to get that right.
Yeah. And I've got Veer Hart has a couple things I'll throw in here. He said the firemen were more spectacle than anything. The book specifically calls out they were only ever to respond to alarms at night to make the scene of them burning out books.
Right, because they wanted to make
they wanted everyone to know.
Everybody to see it. It was going to be beautiful.
Right, that they're burning. Oh my gosh, they're here. They're burning books. So it was maximum effect. And then we got American. Yeah, right. Everyone we don't want to do it. We want everyone to know what's going on and why we're doing this. American healthcare costs are ghastly, which is true. Yep, absolutely. Janet we've had some health issues.
Yeah. I had a heart attack a couple of years ago. And I was in the hospital for 2 days, and it was like $200,000.
$200,000 bill.
And I didn't have open heart surgery. They just went in with a heart catheterization and put stents in.
Right.
That is the least invasive.
Right. Like here's $200,000.
Probably
$200,000.
$500,000.
Right. If they actually
for open hearts.
And Verhart said they charge you $40 to hold your own baby at David's birth. I'm sure they do. I am sure they do. Yeah. All right. So we'll keep going. So that was the in bed. They came in. They did the dialysis, stomach pump. When the next day arrives, Mildred does not acknowledge remembering anything of her suicide attempt and denies it when Montauk attempts to discuss it. She instead explains plots of television parlor family programs, and then she watches all the time on 3 huge screens. Their televisions are so large they take up entire walls. Montauk finds himself having little interest in her shallow forms of entertainment and departs for work.
Right, he was always like, "What are you watching?
Yeah, what are you
about?"
doing?
And she never knew what it was about because it was just a bunch of relatives yelling at each other,
right,
fighting.
Right. When he does, he sees Clarissa outside walking along in the rain. She is opening her mouth to catch raindrops. She says that it's like wine, rubbing a dandelion beneath her chin. She asserts that if the pollen comes off on her, that means that she must be in love. Clarissa rubs it beneath Montauk's chin, and no pollen comes off. He feels embarrassed. She questions him on why he decided to become a fireman and declares that it isn't like the others, that he isn't like the others that she has come across who refuse to listen to what she says or talk to her. He says that she should go off to her appointment with her psychiatrist. She's being forced to see a psychiatrist by the authorities, who have said there's something wrong with her because she is believed to lack sociability. She has a worrying tendency of thinking independently. When she's gone, Montauk tilts his head back and tries to catch the rain in his mouth. He does this for a few moments.
She was my favorite.
She's your favorite.
Yeah, catching her little raindrops.
Right, kid, just living life. Yeah,
just enjoying everything.
Right.
Something
we have Prepper Book Clubs here. Yeah.
We something that just occurred to me then is that a lot of people who can't fit into, the rat race systems are often diagnosed, and going, oh, it's mental health, it's your mental health. It's like, no, how about maybe the systems are broken?
Right. Yeah, right.
Let's
if you don't fit in the box, you're crazy. If you don't fit exactly in, oh well, you must be crazy. Yeah. What's
happening to her? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I'll keep going here. Part 1, section 3. So this is the first scene. What was that?
Oh, the 2 parallel between the 2 books on comfortability. Yeah.
Oh, wait, did I hit the wrong one? All right. All right, there we go. See a lot of parallels between those 2 books on comfortability aspects. Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. And he even, I thought in something he even mentioned Brave New World. So he was absolutely, Ray Bradbury was aware of Brave New World and felt that technology was leading us in that direction. So I think he was aware of that book, not saying he copied any of it, but it, I think, fed into his dystopian concerns, kind of counter utopian concerns. All right, Prepper Book Club says, I had to get another copy when I saw you were discussing this one. Couldn't find the one I had before. Yeah, no, absolutely. Hopefully you did. Books. Yeah, hopefully you read it. And definitely, if you got any thoughts, you can share them. I said you can share them on here. And then if you guys are interested in joining in on the live or anything like that, just send me an email. You absolutely can pull you in, but it's not, you don't have to. Yeah, wanting TV screens on every wall, for sure, right? I mean, and you think about the 1950s, the TVs they had, I think they were they were pretty small TV in this giant wooden cabinet, right? That kind of sat there. It was like this. Yeah. So for him to envision an entire room, for him to envision this entire room, that was kind of a big deal.
Yeah, it would have been. But now, not now.
Yeah, now we all have giant TVs, and what Verhart said, it reminds me of VR. Right, it very would be. I mean, if you were in the 1950s, that's pretty close to predicting VR.
That's really what we are now, though. I mean, you think of most of our culture would love to have that power.
Oh yeah, wrapped around. We're like, give me that.
Yeah. I'm Clarice. Right. I'm gonna go sit outside with my pigs and my chickens and my turkeys.
Yeah, people are like, how do I get that? How do I get the 4-wall TV system? This sounds great. Like, give me that.
And then they go and do homesteading games instead.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I'll play Farmville. On the 4-wall TV.
I know, that always I'm always just shocked with that. Yeah. I'm gonna go be on the farm instead of play Farmville.
Right.
Oh my gosh, my crops are dying. I better go feed them.
Yeah. And Prepper Book Club said living through the TV like the wife was watching some other family. Kind of thought of reality TV today.
Yes.
And it did have some reality TV feel, because that was like the characters were her family.
Yeah, because I mean, there's how many shows are there that you can go vote for your favorite person, text it now.
Right, text it now. Yeah, they're trying to be interactive. Yeah, it was sort of, and he kind of predicted, I think, that. I'm not saying he came up with the idea. I don't know if anyone else predicted it before him.
Which I think it is great for these people, honestly, for their times. I mean, they obviously had some type of insight of what was going to happen, because I mean, I personally am the person I can't wrap my head around what's to come, in this
much
world,
less something 50,
based
60,
on what you see. Yes. And the fact that they were actually able to get it so correctly is very fascinating to me.
Yeah. And then Beerhart said Star Trek holodeck vibes, which absolutely. Holodeck, virtual reality, kind of all that stuff. All right, we'll keep going. This is part 1, section 3. From the first scene in the fire station through the burning the old woman on Elm Street, which is Nightmare on Elm Street. This was before Nightmare on Elm Street, but I just kind of pointed out. Whenever I see Elm Street, I think Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
And we actually have an Elm Street.
We do have an Elm Street in our old downtown.
Yeah, there's an Elm Street here. All right. Montague sees the mechanical hound at the fire station. He tries to touch it, and it growls. Montague informs Captain Beatty of this and suggests that perhaps someone should have set the hound to react to him in that way. He thinks that this is the case, as it happened at 2 other times. Montague ponders aloud what thoughts are in the hound's head and feels pity for it. Beatty asserts that it thinks only what it is told, and that it consists of hunting, killing, and similar activities. Montague's fellow firemen tease him about what he said about the hound. One fireman recounts a story about a fireman living in Seattle who killed himself by setting a hound to hunt his own chemical complex. Beatty says that no one would have set the hound on Montague, and he assures him that he'll have the hound checked out. But just to pause there, we were already kind of talking about that in the beginning.
At this point, he had already set it on Montague.
Right, he probably already did.
Yeah.
Right, because Montague already had books by this point. We find out later.
We see that he had been taking books forever.
Right.
And I'm sure Beatty knew that and was on to him.
Right, I think the hound was already on to him.
To the fact that I sent the hound around. How did you not get that?
Right, yeah.
I always thought he maybe just had one. We knew it was in the aircon vent.
Right.
I was thinking 1, maybe 2, but then when it reveals like later, but at this point I'm still
this Joker starts dropping them down.
Yeah, he got stacks of books. Yeah.
He's been collecting those
for a
while.
I'm still at 1 or 2, So
Right. But he was already onto him, and the hound was already onto him. A little foreshadowing there. All right. During the next week, Montague comes across Clarice outdoors. She speaks with her every day. She asks why he doesn't have children and says that she stopped attending school because it was too routine and mindless. He doesn't see Clarice on the 8th day. He begins to turn around to look for her, but his train comes and he goes to work. When at the firehouse, he asks Beatty what was done with the man whose books they had burned the previous week. Beatty declares that he was brought to the insane asylum. Montague ponders aloud what it might have been like to be in the man's place. He almost lets out that he took a look at the opening line of a book of fairy tales before it was burned. So after they burnt the house, he did. He sort of like opened the book and then he didn't.
And those words he saw, but he couldn't get out of his mind.
But then we find out later he had a bunch of books. So that might be a little contradiction in the storyline.
Well, I think they didn't want to tell you that he had already been questioning his job and what it was. But the fact that he was constantly asking his wife, like, why do you watch this? What is it even about? Was probably your hint that he really didn't fit into this world. Because he couldn't even understand the parlor. He could see that there was, her life had no meaning to her because. So, I mean, they give you glimpses of the fact that he's questioning his where he fits in this existence. And then when he starts dropping those books down, you're like, oh, okay.
Right. Yeah. He had all the books stashed away, which was very Brave New World, right? That was all three of the main characters in Brave New World were kind of that same idea, which they questioned society. They didn't fit in with society. You know.
Well, because he wouldn't have walked and talked to Clarice and been so interested in what Clarice was saying had he been another person who just thought she was crazy and needed to go into the insane asylum. He had a genuine curiosity about how her mind worked. And, you know, for him to be open to listening to that meant that he was believing those things and questioning what society was for himself the entire time.
Right.
Because most people would just be like, leave me alone, kid. You're crazy.
Right, you're crazy. Yeah.
But he
silly little kid. Yeah.
All right, we'll keep going. He asks whether the fireman's job was ever to prevent or put out fires, which was something he got from Clarice. The two fellow firemen consult the rule books and show him the passage where it says that Benjamin Franklin established the Firemen of America in 1790 to burn books influenced by the English. Which once again, they had a book, right? They did have a rule book, so that comes back to the reading and whatnot.
Yes, because they only had training manuals and magazines.
Right, they did have books, that rule book.
Yes.
But just interesting that they're like, no, Benjamin Franklin right here, and they burnt the books all the time.
Right.
Yeah. Which would not be something Benjamin Franklin would do. But it's sort of that rewriting history, you know, that you see now. I feel like that's popular now. It's always been this way. No,
it's called gaslighting.
Right, gaslighting. Yeah. All right. The alarm sounds and everyone gets. No, I'm sorry. What was that, Jay?
Oh no, nothing. The Mandela effect they're talking about is just a conspiracy thing, you know.
Oh no, no. I'm big on the Mandela effect. That one gets you.
I do. I'm in a couple Mandela effect groups on Facebook just because I'm always fascinated by it.
Right. It is. There's some weird stuff in there. Yeah.
I mean, I am the person who believed that he was dead. I'm like, I thought for sure that the dude was dead.
Mandela was dead. Yeah.
I thought he was.
Right. All right, we'll go too far off topic there, but no, definitely Mandela effect.
We'll talk about that more.
We could rabbit hole that all night. All right. We only have 4 minutes left. If you can believe that. Yeah, I know. We did not get very far. We were talking earlier, like, we'll get through this one in one night. We're still kind of on chapter 1, so that's okay.
Yeah. No, it's very interesting though. It's this was a lot easier kind of a read than Brave New World, I think.
Yeah.
I think maybe we were semi-able to kind of relate to the people because even though they were very superficial society, they weren't breeding us in bottles and they were still, you know,
we weren't weaker babies.
Yeah.
Well, it's people that just want to sit around and watch their TV and be left alone. Yeah. I mean, it is. It's more relatable, I think. Well, I feel like we need to do another one of these to get further into the book. It's pet time. You stack up the pets here.
She's been staring at me to come over.
All right, Jay, do you want to do next week or do you want to go 2 weeks?
Yeah, I reckon if everyone's all happy, keep a routine.
Yeah, 1 week or 2 weeks? 1 week or 2?
Yeah, if everyone's happy for a week, I'm
okay. No, next week is good. Yeah. I think Brave New World was 2. Yeah, right? I think Brave New World took 2. We did Brave
New World in 2.
2's been pretty much, I guess. I guess 2's been pretty much all of them. Just for some reason, this seems like a shorter book. But any idea the next book? Well, so my thought on the next book, I've got I showed Janet, I've got a list of the next 20 books, but it keeps changing and new ones keep getting added. And I mentioned there's an author that might join us, maybe, and actually review a book with us. So that'll come up the list a little bit if we can work that out, which might be kind of fun. I think next we're looking Slaughterhouse 5. If you guys are good with that, Slaughterhouse 5, it's supposed to be one of those, greatest book ever written kind of books. It has an anti-war twist to it, war story, anti-war story, World War II. It's got some time travel. It's got some aliens. It's got a little bit of everything in it. So Slaughterhouse 5. I do want to get to 1984.
Yes.
at some point, but maybe Slaughterhouse 5 next. If you guys are good for that. Do you still
want to do, what was that one that you wanted me to read that's depressing?
Oh, well, The Road.
The
Road. Yeah, The Road at some points. Anthem? You know, The Road was, I haven't done Anthem. I'll add that to my list. I don't have Anthem. But no, I've got I got a bunch. I got a whole list. So anyone interested, certainly you guys are welcome to join. It's free to join. You don't have to go on the screen if you don't want to. If you got ideas for books. But if you're good with that, Jay, you want to do Slaughterhouse 5 next? I mean, we're still working on this book, but okay, yeah, Slaughterhouse 5 is one of those. Is a good book. Good book, solid.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to go on screen, but you don't want to show yourself, you could go camera off.
Yeah, you could. You could go camera off. Right.
Allows you to have
just an icon or something.
Just an icon.
Yeah, if you want to join the conversation, you don't have to. You can stick and chat. No, not pressuring anybody, but that's our hour, guys. I feel like it went so fast.
Yeah. So what book do you want next? Because
we're doing Fahrenheit 451 right now.
Yes.
We'll do that again next week.
Yes.
Whenever we finish Fahrenheit 451, we'll do Slaughterhouse 5.
Okay. So Slaughterhouse 5.
Yeah, Slaughterhouse 5 will be the next
that we'll pick up after this is done.
Yep.
Okay. The anti-war scene is quite pertinent.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Yeah. No, it is. It's a good book.
I can start
it's a good book.
Now,
yeah, start reading that one now. We'll pick this one again next week. Jay, super appreciate you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you too, guys. Yeah, thanks everyone in the chat. We'll get a heap of us up next time.
No, absolutely. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, man.